I'm David, a 32-year-old freelance photographer from a small town just outside Pittsburgh. This happened back in October 2023 when I was hustling to make ends meet after a rough year. Divorce, moving into a cramped apartment, the whole mess. I was taking any gig I could get, mostly weddings and headshots. But when a real estate agent named Karen emailed me about shooting a mansion in the boonies, I jumped at it. The pay was decent, $500 for a day's work, and she said it was a quick job, just snapping pics of a vacant luxury home for a listing. I figured it'd be a nice change of pace, maybe even a chance to flex my creative side with some sleek interior shots. The place was about an hour's drive into the hills, surrounded by dense woods, and when I pulled up that crisp fall morning, the mansion looked like it belonged in a magazine. Glass walls, sharp angles, not a speck of dirt. Karen had given me a gate code and said I'd be alone, which was fine by me. I grabbed my camera, tripod, and a coffee, ready to knock this out. The air felt heavy, though, like the quiet before a storm, and I couldn't shake this weird itch in my gut, like I was being watched from the trees that I started in the living room, framing shots of the sleek leather sectional and the massive floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the golden autumn leaves outside. The house was eerily perfect. Every surface gleamed, not a single smudge or scuff. I moved methodically, snapping the kitchen with its marble island, the dining room with a chandelier that looked like frozen raindrops, and a hallway lined with abstract art. But as I reviewed my shots on the camera's LCD, something felt wrong. In one photo, a chair I'd sworn was angled toward the window was now perfectly aligned with the table. In another, a door I'd passed, closed tight, was cracked open just an inch. I chalked it up to being tired, maybe distracted by the job. But my hands got clammy, and my heart did this little stutter. I kept shooting, trying to focus, but the more I looked at the previews, the more I noticed tiny shifts. A vase tilted slightly, a curtain pulled back just a hair. Then, in one shot of the master bedroom, I saw it, a dark smudge in the mirror behind the bed, like a shadow with no source. I spun around, but the room was empty, the mirror reflecting nothing but my own pale face. My stomach twisted, and I told myself it was just the light playing tricks. But deep down, I knew something was off, way off that I tried to shake off that uneasy feeling and kept working, telling myself I was just psyching myself out. The mansion was huge, with endless rooms to cover, so I moved to the second floor, where a long hallway stretched out with doors on either side. The carpet was this deep burgundy, so plush it swallowed my footsteps, and the walls had these weird, embossed patterns that seemed to shift if you stared too long, like faces forming in the swirls. I snapped a shot of a guest bedroom, and when I checked the preview, my breath caught. A pillow on the bed, which I'd seen perfectly fluffed, was dented in the photo, like someone had just laid their head on it. I froze, staring at the empty room, my pulse hammering in my ears. I even walked over and touched the pillow. It was smooth, no dent. My mouth went dry, and I started sweating despite the chilly air. I kept shooting, but every click of the shutter felt like it was daring something to happen. In another photo, a window shade I hadn't touched was half raised, showing the darkening woods outside. I swear I heard a faint creak from somewhere downstairs, like a door easing open, but when I called out, "Hello," my voice just echoed back. I felt like a kid scared of the dark, except this was worse, because I wasn't alone, was I? By now, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows that made the house feel alive, like it was watching me right back. I decided I'd had enough and headed for the front door, ready to get the hell out. But when I punched the code into the gate panel, the thing just beeped angrily and stayed shut. I tried again, double-checking the numbers Karen gave me. Nothing. My car was parked right outside the gate, a beat-up Honda Civic that never failed me, but when I climbed in and turned the key, it just clicked. Dead. The battery had been fine that morning, and I hadn't left any lights on. My chest tightened, and I popped the hood, but everything looked normal. No cut wires, no obvious sabotage. I grabbed my phone to call Karen, but there was no signal, not even a single bar. The air felt thicker now, like it was pressing down on me, and the woods around the mansion seemed to lean in closer. I went back inside to find a landline, my footsteps echoing too loudly in the silent foyer. That's when I noticed a faint scuff mark on the hardwood near the staircase, leading to a corner I hadn't explored. My gut screamed at me to leave, but I needed answers, and that's when I saw it. A small, almost invisible hatch in the floor, tucked under a rug with frayed, moth-eaten edges that I stared at that hatch like it was a snake ready to strike, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The rug covering it was old, its edges curling like burnt paper, and the hatch itself was metal, rusted at the hinges but with a shiny new padlock that didn't match the rest of the house's sleek vibe. I don't know why I didn't just run. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe I needed to know what was going on. I grabbed a fire poker from the living room's fancy fireplace, its handle carved with these weird, spiraling vines, and pried the lock until it snapped with a loud clang. The hatch creaked open, revealing a narrow wooden staircase descending into darkness. The air that wafted up smelled damp, like wet earth, and something sour, like spoiled milk. I flicked on my phone's flashlight, my hands shaking so bad the beam danced across the walls. I called out again. Anyone there? Stupid, I know, but the silence was worse than any answer. Step by step, I went down, each board groaning under my weight. The basement was colder than the rest of the house, and I swear I felt a draft, like a breath on the back of my neck. When I reached the bottom, my light caught something that made my stomach lurch, a neatly folded stack of clothes on a table, next to a plate of fresh fruit and a flickering battery-powered lantern. The basement wasn't some dusty storage space. It was lived in. There was a cot in one corner, its blanket tucked in with hospital precision, and shelves lined with canned food, water bottles, and notebooks with cracked leather covers. My flashlight swept across the room, catching glints of metal, scissors, a pocket knife, and what looked like a set of old keys hanging on a hook. Then I saw the wall. It was covered in photos, pinned up like a serial killer's scrapbook. Dozens of faces stared back at me, men and women, some smiling, some looking confused, all taken in this house. My breath hitched as I recognized the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, and the backgrounds. These people had been here, just like me. My hands trembled as I scanned the photos, and then I saw it. My own face, grainy but unmistakable, standing in the foyer with my camera. The photo was time-stamped today. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the table to keep from falling. Someone had been here, watching me, close enough to snap that picture without me noticing. I heard a faint shuffle above me, like footsteps on the hardwood, and my blood ran cold. I wasn't alone in this house, and whoever was up there knew exactly where I was. Panic clawed at my chest, but I couldn't move, couldn't think. My eyes were glued to that wall of faces, wondering what had happened to them. My back hit the kitchen counter, the fire poker slipping in my sweaty grip as I stared at the pantry door, my chest heaving like I'd just sprinted a mile. Those eyes, too wide, too bright, burned into my memory, like they weren't human but something pretending to be. The humming stopped, replaced by a silence so thick it felt like it was choking me. I wanted to run, to scream, but I was trapped in this house with no way out. The muddy footprint was still there, smudged now, like someone had stepped through it in a hurry. I noticed more prints, faint but leading toward the staircase, their uneven tread making my skin crawl. My flashlight flickered, the battery dying at the worst possible moment, and I cursed under my breath, fumbling to switch it back to my phone's light. That's when I saw something glinting on the counter. A single key, old and tarnished, with a tag that read "Gate" in faded ink. It hadn't been there before. My mind raced. Was this a way out, or another part of the game? I grabbed it, my hands shaking, and heard a low scrape, like nails dragging across wood, coming from upstairs. Whatever was in this house wasn't hiding anymore. It was moving, and it wanted me to know it. I bolted for the staircase, clutching the key and the poker, my phone's light bouncing wildly as I took the steps two at a time. The air up here was colder, sharper, like stepping into a freezer, and the embossed wall patterns seemed to writhe in the shadows. I followed the muddy prints down the hallway, my breath clouding in front of me, until they stopped at a door I hadn't noticed before, plain, unmarked, with a brass knob that looked chewed up, like someone had tried to claw it open. My gut screamed at me to turn back, but I had to know if this was my way out or if I was walking into a trap. I tried the gate key in the lock, but it didn't fit. My hands were slick with sweat, and I nearly dropped it when I heard a whisper, soft, garbled, like a radio stuck between stations, coming from behind the door. "David," it said, clear as day, and my blood turned to ice. No one knew I was here except Karen, and she'd never called me by my first name. I backed away, my heart hammering, and the door creaked open on its own, just an inch, revealing a sliver of darkness that seemed to pulse like it was breathing. Something was in there, waiting for me, and I knew if I stepped closer, I'd never come back out. That giggle hung in the air like poison, and I stood there, poker raised, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I thought I'd pass out. The foyer was empty, but the shadows seemed to twist, like they were laughing at me too. My phone's light was dimming fast, and I could barely make out the open hatch, its dark mouth gaping like it wanted to swallow me whole. The red scarf on the stairs was still there, its edges frayed like it had been torn, and I couldn't stop picturing that woman's face from the photo, her wide, terrified eyes. The hum from the basement grew louder, not words but a rhythm, like a heartbeat pulsing through the walls. I knew I couldn't stay here, not with that thing giggling behind me, but the idea of going back down those stairs made my skin crawl. I glanced at the gate key in my hand, its tarnished surface glinting faintly, and decided to try it one more time. I bolted for the front door, my shoes slipping on the hardwood, and fumbled with the gate panel outside. The key fit, thank God, but when I turned it, the gate just buzzed and stayed shut. My hands shook as I tried again, and that's when I felt it, a cold breath on the back of my neck, so close I could smell something sour, like rotting fruit. I whipped around, but there was nothing, just the open door and the dark woods beyond that. I stumbled back inside, my mind a mess, and slammed the front door shut, like that would keep whatever was out there from getting in. The hum from the basement was louder now, vibrating in my chest, and I knew I had no choice. I had to face it. I grabbed the red scarf off the stairs, clutching it like a lifeline, and started down into the basement again, each step heavier than the last. The air was so cold it burned my lungs, and the lantern from before was still flickering, casting shadows that danced like they were mocking me. The wall of photos was still there, but now one was missing. The woman's Polaroid was gone, just a rusty thumbtack left behind. My stomach twisted as I realized whoever was doing this was still moving things, still playing their sick game. I scanned the room and saw something new. A small, wooden box on the table, its lid carved with the same spiraling vines as the fire poker. My hands trembled as I opened it, and inside was a single photo, me, standing at the hatch, taken from below, like someone had been waiting at the bottom of the stairs. My blood ran cold, and the humming stopped, replaced by a slow, deliberate creak from the stairs behind me. I turned, poker raised, and saw a figure at the top of the hatch, too tall, too thin, its head tilted at an angle that wasn't right. It didn't move, just stared, and I swear its eyes glinted like coins in the dark that I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, staring at that figure at the top of the hatch, its two long limbs and glinting eyes like something ripped out of a nightmare. The fire poker felt useless in my hands, but I gripped it anyway, my knuckles white as I backed toward the table, my eyes locked on that thing. It didn't move, just tilted its head further, like it was studying me, and I swear I heard that giggle again, low and wrong, echoing in my skull. My phone was dead now, the lantern barely flickering, and the basement felt like a tomb closing in. In a panic, I grabbed the wooden box and hurled it at the figure, hoping to distract it. The box smashed against the hatch frame, spilling photos and a small, brass key that skittered across the floor. The figure flinched, just enough, and I dove for the key, my hands scraping the cold concrete. It was the same size as the gate key, but unmarked, and I didn't think twice. I bolted up the stairs, shoving past the figure, which felt like brushing against damp cloth and bone. It didn't grab me, didn't move, just let out a hiss that made my skin crawl. I slammed the hatch shut behind me, my heart pounding, and jammed the new key into the gate panel outside. This time, it clicked, and the gate swung open, creaking like it was laughing at me. That I sprinted to my car, fumbling with the keys, and by some miracle, the engine roared to life. Guess the battery wasn't dead after all. I peeled out, tires screeching, the mansion shrinking in my rearview mirror as the woods swallowed it up. My hands shook so bad I could barely steer, and I kept glancing back, half expecting to see that thing loping after me. I didn't stop until I hit a gas station 20 miles away, where I finally got a signal and called the cops. They checked the place out the next day, but found nothing. No photos, no journals, no scarf, just an empty mansion with a for sale sign. Karen, the agent, swore she'd never hired me. Her email was gone from my inbox, like it had never existed. I still have that brass key, though, and sometimes I wake up at night, feeling that cold breath on my neck, hearing that giggle in the dark. I don't know what was in that house, but it knew my name, my face, my life. I sold my camera and moved across the state, but I still check my locks every night. Whoever, or whatever, set that trap is still out there, and I'm not sure I'm free yet. I don't think I ever will be. Hey everyone, I'm Rachel, a 21-year-old biology major, and this happened back in the fall of 2023 when I was renting a room in a quiet, fancy neighborhood near my university. I'd moved there for my junior year, juggling classes, a part-time cafe job, and way too many late-night study sessions. Life was hectic but good. My roommates were chill, and our little house was cozy, with creaky floors and a big upstairs window in my room that faced this gorgeous, old Victorian mansion across the street. That house was something else, tall, elegant, with ivy crawling up its brick walls and these perfectly trimmed hedges, but it always looked empty. No cars, no lights, just this eerie stillness. I'd stare at it sometimes while procrastinating on assignments, wondering who could afford to keep a place like that so pristine but never live in it. Then one afternoon, I noticed him, a boy, maybe 10 years old, standing dead still at the mansion's attic window, staring right at my house. His face was pale, almost glowing in the fading light, with these dark, hollow eyes that seemed to lock onto mine. It gave me chills, but I figured he was just some kid visiting family. I mean, what else could it be, right? The next few days, I couldn't stop checking that window. Every afternoon, around 4 p.m., there he was, same spot, same blank stare. I started calling him Attic Boy in my head. He wore this old-fashioned sweater, like something from a thrift store, with a weird, faded pattern that reminded me of my grandma's knitting. I brought it up to my roommates over dinner one night, describing his creepy stillness, but they laughed it off, saying the mansion had been empty for years. My landlord, a nosy guy who loved gossip, swore nobody had lived there since he moved to the neighborhood a decade ago. That made my stomach twist. I started watching him closer, even setting a reminder on my phone to catch him at 4. One evening, I got bold and snapped a photo with my phone, zooming in as far as I could. His face was blurry, but those eyes, they felt familiar, like I'd seen them somewhere before, maybe in a dream. I couldn't shake the feeling he was watching me, not just the house. That night, I heard a faint tapping from my closet, like fingernails on wood. I told myself it was the old pipes or the house settling, but I slept with the lights on, my heart racing every time I glanced at that dark closet door. Be why the next week, I was obsessed. I'd rush home from class to catch Attic Boy at 4 p.m., my heart pounding as I climbed the stairs to my room. He was always there, never moving, his face pressed close to the glass, those eyes boring into me. I started noticing little things, like how his sweater seemed to shimmer faintly, almost like it wasn't fully there, or how the attic window's reflection never showed the trees behind him, just a flat, gray haze. I tried sketching him in my notebook once, but my hands shook so bad the drawing looked wrong, like I'd smudged his face into something too sharp, too old. I stopped telling my roommates about him. They'd just roll their eyes and call me paranoid. But I wasn't imagining this. One day, I waved at him, feeling stupid but desperate for a reaction. He didn't blink, didn't move, but I swear the air in my room got colder, like someone had opened a window in January. That night, the tapping in my closet came back, louder, more insistent. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. I yanked the closet door open, half expecting to find a rat or something, but it was empty, just my clothes swaying slightly, like they'd been brushed by invisible fingers. I slammed it shut, my breath hitching, and didn't sleep a wink that I couldn't let it go. The next morning, I decided to do something dumb. I crossed the street and knocked on the mansion's door. My palms were sweaty, and I kept glancing up at the attic window, half expecting to see him there, but it was empty. After a long wait, the door creaked open, and this elderly woman stood there, her face all sharp angles and papery skin, like she'd stepped out of a black and white photo. She looked confused, her eyes darting past me like she expected someone else. I stammered out something about seeing a kid in her attic, and her expression changed. Her lips trembled, and she gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles went white. "Come in," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Inside, the house smelled like old books and lavender, and every step echoed on the polished wood floors. She led me up a narrow staircase to the attic, her hands shaking as she unlocked the door. The room was small, dusty, with a single bed covered in a faded quilt and a toy train set frozen mid-loop. She pointed to a framed photo on the dresser, her voice breaking as she said, "That's Charlie, my son. He drowned in the lake out back 20 years ago." I picked up the photo, my heart stopping. It was him. Attic boy. Same sweater, same hollow eyes, staring right through me that I left the mansion in a daze. The photo of Charlie burned into my mind. The old woman, Mrs. Hargrove, she said her name was, told me nobody had been in that attic since Charlie's death. She lived alone, rarely left the house, and swore the attic stayed locked. My legs felt like jelly as I crossed the street back home, the autumn air biting at my skin. I kept glancing back at the mansion, expecting to see him, but the window was empty, just a dark square against the graying sky. That afternoon, 4 p.m. came and went, and Charlie didn't show. I should have been relieved, but instead, my stomach churned with this heavy, gnawing dread. I couldn't focus on my assignments. Every sound in the house made me jump. Later that night, I caught my reflection in my bedroom mirror, and for a split second, I saw him standing behind me, his pale face hovering over my shoulder, his lips parted like he was about to speak. I spun around, heart hammering, but nobody was there. The tapping in my closet started again, slow and deliberate, like someone was testing if I'd notice. I didn't dare open it this time. I just sat on my bed, clutching my phone, telling myself I was losing it. The rest of that day felt wrong, like the air itself was heavier. I tried to distract myself by watching TV downstairs, but even with my roommates laughing at some dumb reality show, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Every time I passed a window or a mirror, I'd check the reflection, terrified I'd see him again. Around 9 p.m., I went back to my room to grab my charger, and that's when it got worse. The closet door was cracked open, just an inch, even though I knew I'd slammed it shut. I froze, staring at the gap, my breath catching in my throat. The tapping had stopped, but now there was this faint humming, like a kid singing a tuneless song, coming from inside. I grabbed a broom from the hallway, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold it, and nudged the door open. The humming stopped instantly. The closet was empty again, but my favorite scarf, a bright red one my mom gave me, was tied into a tight, deliberate knot around the rod, like someone had been playing with it. I untied it with trembling fingers, my skin crawling, and that's when I heard it, a whisper, right behind me, saying, "Rachel." My name, clear as day. I screamed, dropped the scarf, and ran downstairs, slamming my bedroom door shut that I didn't tell my roommates what happened. They'd think I was nuts, and honestly, I was starting to wonder myself. I crashed on the living room couch that night, wrapped in a blanket, too freaked out to go back to my room. Every creak of the house made my heart race, and I kept my phone's flashlight on, aimed at the staircase like it could protect me. I couldn't stop replaying that whisper, my name, spoken in this soft, raspy voice that didn't sound human. I tried Googling Charlie's death, but all I found was a blurry obituary from 2003 about a 10-year-old drowning in the lake behind the mansion. No details, just a grainy photo that matched the one Mrs. Hargrove showed me. Around midnight, I heard footsteps upstairs, slow and deliberate, like someone pacing in my room. My roommates were both snoring in their beds. I checked. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, but the air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me. By morning, I was a wreck, my eyes bloodshot, my hands still shaky. I decided I had to go back to my room, if only to prove to myself I wasn't crazy. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Charlie wasn't just in the mansion anymore. When I finally dragged myself upstairs, my bedroom door was wide open, even though I'd locked it before running downstairs. My scarf was back in the closet, knotted again, but this time it was wrapped around a small, wooden toy, a carved horse, painted blue, with one chipped ear. I'd never seen it before. My stomach dropped as I picked it up, its surface cold and oddly slick, like it had been pulled out of water. I turned it over and scratched into the bottom where the letters Sish, Charlie Hargrove. My breath hitched, and I dropped the horse, backing away until I hit the wall. That's when I noticed the mirror across the room. Charlie was there, clear as day, standing in the reflection but not in the room. His head was tilted, his mouth curled into a small, sad smile, and his eyes followed me as I stumbled toward the door. The tapping started again, not from the closet this time, but from the window, sharp, insistent, like he was trying to get in. I grabbed my phone and keys, bolted out of the house, and didn't stop running until I was halfway down the block, my chest burning, tears streaming down my face. I ended up at the campus library, hiding in a quiet corner, trying to make sense of everything. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I clutched the wooden horse I'd grabbed in my panic. It was still cold, like it had been dipped in ice water. I kept checking over my shoulder, half expecting Charlie to be standing there, but it was just students studying, oblivious to my freakout. I tried calling Mrs. Hargrove, but her number went straight to a disconnected tone, which made my skin crawl even more. I Googled the mansion again, digging deeper, and found an old forum post from 2010 about weird sightings in the neighborhood. Someone mentioned a kid in the attic window, but the thread died with no answers. My heart was racing as I realized this wasn't just me. I wanted to go back to the house, to confront whatever this was, but the thought of seeing Charlie in my mirror again made my stomach lurch. Around 3 p.m., I texted my roommate to check my room. She said everything looked normal, no toys, no knotted scarf. That should have calmed me down, but it didn't. It felt like Charlie was playing with me, like he was waiting for me to come back. By 4 p.m., I was staring out the library window, and for a split second, I swear I saw him in the reflection of the glass, his pale face hovering just behind mine that I couldn't stay away forever, so I forced myself to head home as the sun started setting, the sky turning this bruised purple color that felt way too ominous. When I got to the house, my roommates were out, and the silence was suffocating. I crept upstairs, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. My room looked normal at first, bed made, scarf hanging neatly in the closet, but the wooden horse was back on my desk, now with a tiny, damp handprint smudged across its side. I felt like I was going to throw up. Then I heard it, a soft giggle, like a kid trying not to be caught, coming from the closet. I grabbed a flashlight from my drawer, my hands sweaty and shaking, and aimed it at the closet door. It was ajar again, just enough to see darkness inside. I don't know why I didn't run, but something in me snapped. I needed answers. I yanked the door open, and the giggling stopped. There, on the closet floor, was a puddle of water, shimmering like it had just formed, with tiny, bare footprints leading out of it and stopping at the edge of my rug. My flashlight beam shook as I followed the prints, and that's when the room went ice cold, and the mirror across from me started to fog up, like someone was breathing on it from the other side. That I stood frozen, staring at the fogged up mirror, my flashlight beam cutting through the dim room like a lifeline. The air felt thick, like I was breathing through a wet cloth, and my skin prickled as if someone was standing right behind me. The mirror's fog started to clear, and there he was, Charlie, his pale face sharper now, his eyes wide and unblinking, like black marbles glinting in the light. His sweater hung loose, dripping water that pooled on the floor in the reflection, but when I turned, nothing was there. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it had burst. I whispered, "What do you want?" My voice cracking, barely audible. The mirror didn't answer, but the tapping started again, this time from the window, faster, like impatient knuckles rapping on glass. I spun around, and the curtains were swaying slightly, like a breeze had slipped through, but the window was shut tight. I noticed the wooden horse on my desk was gone again, and in its place was a small, soggy piece of paper, folded into a lopsided star. I didn't want to touch it, but my hands moved on their own, unfolding it to find a child's scrawl, "Stay my neighbor." My blood ran cold, and I dropped the paper, backing toward the door, my flashlight shaking in my grip. That I didn't stop running until I was back in my house, slamming the front door and locking it like that could keep Charlie out. My chest heaved, my throat raw from screaming, and I collapsed against the wall, shaking so bad I could barely stand. The toy train's rusted edges were still vivid in my mind, and that hand, small, pale, reaching from the lake, felt like it was burned into my vision. I kept telling myself it was over, that leaving the train at the lake had done something. But the house felt wrong, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I checked every mirror downstairs, terrified I'd see him again, but they were clear, just my own panicked face staring back. Upstairs, my bedroom door was still open, and I couldn't bring myself to go near it. Instead, I grabbed a kitchen knife. Stupid, I know, but it made me feel less helpless, and sat on the couch, eyes glued to the staircase. Around 10 p.m., my roommates came home, laughing about some party, but their voices died when they saw me, knife in hand, looking like I'd seen a ghost. I mumbled something about a bad day and begged them to stay downstairs with me. For once, they didn't argue, but I could tell they thought I was losing it. When dawn broke, I was already outside, standing by the lake behind the mansion, the air damp and heavy with mist. The water looked blacker than before, like it was swallowing the light, and my hands shook as I held the rusted toy train I'd picked up from the mud. I don't know why, but I felt like giving it back to the lake might stop Charlie. My breath hitched as I knelt by the shore, the mud cold and slick under my knees. I whispered, "Charlie, this is yours. I'm not your neighbor. Please rest." I tossed the train into the water, watching it sink with a soft plop. The lake went still, not a ripple, and for a moment, I felt lighter, like I'd done something right. Then the mist parted, and I saw him. Charlie, standing ankle-deep in the water, his sweater dripping, his eyes softer now, almost sad. He didn't move, just stared, and then he sank slowly into the lake, like the water was pulling him home. I waited, heart pounding, but he didn't come back. The air warmed, and the heaviness lifted, leaving just me and the quiet morning that I moved out of that house a week later, crashing with a friend until I found a new place across town. I never went back to the mansion or checked the attic window again. I couldn't handle it. Mrs. Hargrove called me once, her voice shaky, saying she felt peace in the house for the first time in years, like Charlie was finally gone. I still don't understand what happened, why he picked me, or how he got into my mirrors and closet. Sometimes I dream about that lake, the water rippling, but Charlie's never there. I kept the soggy paper star tucked in a box I don't open, just in case. The tapping never came back, and the mirrors stayed clear, but I avoid looking into them too long at night. I'm okay now, but I'll never forget those eyes or the way my name sounded in his voice. If you're ever in a quiet neighborhood and see a kid in a window, don't wave. Just walk away. I wish I had. My name is Leo, and up until last month, I thought my girlfriend Camila and I had hit the jackpot. We'd been saving up for years to open a tiny coffee shop in the city, but rent was killing us. So when we found the ad for live-in caretakers at some old countryside estate, it sounded too good to be true. Free rent, a cozy cottage, and light maintenance work? Sign us up. The owners, a stiff, silver-haired couple named the Hargroves, assured us the main mansion had been empty for a decade. Just keep the garden tidy and check for leaks, they said. Easy. The first week was paradise. Fresh air, starry nights, and the kind of quiet you only get miles from civilization. But then, around the 7th night, I woke up to a light flickering in the mansion's top-floor window. Not just a glow, something moving. Like someone was pacing. I nudged Camila, but she just mumbled, probably a timer or something. That's when we heard it. Footsteps. Not the creaky, old house kind, but deliberate, heavy steps crossing the hardwood floors above us. Then laughter, faint, almost playful, but wrong. It wasn't coming from the mansion. It was outside, circling the cottage. We froze. The motion-activated floodlight didn't turn on. No shadows under the door. Just that awful, breathy giggle, like someone was right next to our window. By morning, we convinced ourselves it was foxes or the wind. But then Camila screamed from the porch. There, pressed into the dew-soaked grass, were barefoot footprints, not leading away from the mansion, toward us. And they stopped at our doorstep. We checked the security cameras first thing. The Hargroves had left us a single monitor hooked up to a few grainy feeds around the property. The footage from midnight to 3 a.m. was glitched, just static, like someone had smeared the screen with grease. But the timestamp kept rolling. My stomach dropped when I noticed the other feeds were fine. Just the mansion's cameras. Just those hours. Camila kept clicking through the files, her nails tapping too fast. Maybe it's a wiring issue, she said, but her voice was thin. I didn't argue. That afternoon, we forced ourselves to walk the property, pretending to inspect the garden. The mansion loomed behind us, its windows reflecting the sky like blank eyes. Then I saw it. The front door was cracked open. Not much, just enough to show a sliver of darkness inside. We knew we'd locked it after the Hargroves' last visit. The air inside smelled like wax and wet wood. Dust coated the foyer, but halfway up the grand staircase, I spotted a single clean handprint on the banister. Fresh. Camila grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. Upstairs, a door creaked. Not from wind. This was a slow, deliberate swing. We followed the sound to a guest room at the end of the hall. The bed was neatly made, layers of dust undisturbed, except for two things: a half-empty wine glass on the nightstand, lipstick smudged on the rim, and a candle, still warm to the touch. My blood went cold. That's when Camila whispered, "Leo." She was holding a little notebook, its pages filled with jagged handwriting. The first line read, "They think I'm gone." That notebook kept me awake for hours after we fled back to the cottage. The pages were filled with frantic scribbles, dates going back years, all in the same uneven hand. "The new ones are here," one entry said. "They always stay in the cottage first." The worst was the last page. "The cottage is next." Camila wanted to call the Hargroves immediately, but I caught something in her voice, a tremor she couldn't hide. She was scared, yeah, but also curious. That night, we barricaded the door with a chair and left every light on. I must have drifted off around 1 a.m., because the next thing I knew, Camila was shaking me awake, her fingers digging into my shoulder. "Listen," she breathed. Above us, on the cottage roof, something was moving. Not raccoons, not branches. Something heavy, dragging itself slowly from one edge to the other. Then came the scratching at the door. Not knocking, not wind. Fingernails. I grabbed the fireplace poker and yanked the door open, ready to swing, but nothing was there. Just the empty porch and the too bright moon. That's when Camila gasped. On the window beside the door, streaked in what looked like wet mud, was a single word: "Stay." My blood turned to ice. Not just because of the message, but because of the fingerprints smeared around it, small, like a child's. We stood there, staring, until a noise from the mansion snapped our heads up. Every light inside was on now, blazing like a damn Christmas display. Through the upstairs windows, shadows darted. Too fast, too many. Then, clear as day, a woman's voice called from the direction of the mansion. "Come inside, loves. It's warmer here." Camila's hand found mine. Hers was shaking. Mine wasn't. I'd gone numb that we didn't sleep that night. Not even after the voice stopped and the mansion's lights flicked off one by one just before dawn. Camila sat at the kitchen table, gripping her coffee like it was the only real thing left, while I paced. "We're leaving today," I told her. "Screw the job, screw the money." But Camila, always the practical one, just kept staring out the window at the mansion. "And go where, Leo?" she asked quietly. "What if it follows?" That stuck in my ribs like a knife. Because she was right. The footprints, the voice, the goddamn writing. None of it made sense, but it all pointed to one thing. Whatever was in that house knew us now. And it wasn't just watching. It was testing. Around noon, we finally got a hold of the Hargroves. Their reaction? A long pause. Then, "Oh, you must be hearing the pipes." That old place settles strangely. But I heard it. The way Mrs. Hargrove's breath hitched when Camila mentioned the notebook, the BY Sunset. We'd packed our bags. The plan was simple. Drive to the nearest motel, then figure things out in the morning. But as I carried the last duffel to the car, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The cottage's front door, the one we'd barricaded, the one with the muddy writing, was wide open again. And inside, the air smelled like candle wax. Camila screamed from the bedroom. I ran to find her standing over our half-packed suitcase. Nestled between our clothes was that damn notebook, flipped open to a new page. Fresh ink glistened under the lamp. "You promised to stay." Outside, the motion-activated floodlight clicked on, illuminating the lawn. Dozens of barefoot footprints now circled the cottage, pressed deep into the dirt. And at the center of them all, facing the house, was a single pair of child-sized shoes. We didn't wait another second. I grabbed Camila's arm and bolted for the car, leaving everything behind. Our clothes, the laptop, even our damn toothbrushes. The engine roared to life as I peeled down the gravel driveway, rearview mirror filled with the shrinking image of that cursed mansion. But halfway to the main road, the headlights caught something that made me slam the brakes. There, standing in the middle of the lane, was a pale figure in what looked like an old-fashioned nightgown. Not walking toward us, not running, just waiting. Camila's scream was still echoing in my ears when the figure vanished. Not like it walked away. 1 second it was there, the next gone. The radio suddenly crackled to life, static hissing, then a child's whisper. "You promised." I stomped on the gas so hard the tires screamed. The motel room felt like a bunker that night. We pushed the dresser against the door and slept with the lights on, taking turns keeping watch. Around 3 a.m., I noticed Camila wasn't in bed. I found her by the window, staring at something in her hand. It was a Polaroid photo, one we'd never seen before. The image showed the mansion's front porch, and sitting on the steps was a little girl in that same nightgown, hugging her knees. But what made my blood freeze was what was written on the white border in red marker. "Your turn to watch the house." Camila's hands were shaking so badly the photo fluttered to the floor. That's when we both heard it. 3 soft knocks on the motel door. Not from the hallway. From inside the room that we moved 3 times that month. Different towns, different motels. But every morning, we'd find something, a single muddy footprint by the bed, that damn Polaroid tucked in our luggage, or the faint smell of candle wax in the shower. The worst was when we stayed at Camila's parents' place. Her mom asked why we kept checking the windows at night. Then one evening, her little nephew started crying about this sad girl who stood in the backyard, pointing at Camila. That's when we realized it wasn't about the mansion anymore. We'd taken something with us. Or maybe something had let us leave because we were already marked. Last week, we drove back to the estate. The Hargroves had sold it months before, but the new owners never moved in. The cottage was exactly as we'd left it. Even our toothbrushes still by the sink. We didn't go inside, just stood at the edge of the property as the sun set, watching the mansion's windows go dark one by one. Then, in an upstairs window, a light flicked on. A shadow moved across the curtain. And for the first time, we understood. Some houses don't get haunted. Some houses do the haunting. We got in the car and drove away for good. The coffee shop dream is dead, but so is the knocking. Mostly. Sometimes at 2 a.m., I'll wake up to the smell of wax and hear Camila whispering in her sleep. It's not our turn yet.